12 years. That's how long I'd been married to Camille, and I thought I'd finally learned the subtle language of her eyes. The way they crinkled when she laughed, the spark that danced there when she was about to tease me, the softness that sometimes rested there when she let the guard down. But tonight, sitting at a table draped in white linen and gleaming with crystal and silver, I saw none of that. I saw something different. Something that made the bottom drop out of my stomach like a trapdoor. Our anniversary dinner at Lefebvre, the most exclusive restaurant in town, had been her idea. She'd chosen the table, round, big enough for 6, a statement that the night was as much for her family as for us. I should have known. Camille always found a way to bring them into the circle, as if I were a guest in my own marriage. And tonight was no different. Her mother, Simone, perched at the table's edge like a queen on her throne, as darting around the room for someone to impress. Her father, Bernard, wilted beside her, his mouth turned down at the corners, eyes glazed. Then there was Renata, Camille's younger sister, and my perpetual thorn. She'd made a sport of calling me the charity case, always with that crooked smile that made me feel like an imposter at my own table. Camille, of course, sat like a goddess at the head, her auburn hair shimmering under the candlelight, a glass of white wine resting between her fingers. She was wearing the blue dress, the one that hugged her curves just enough to remind me of the nights when I traced those lines with my hands. But tonight, the sparkle in her eyes wasn't for me. It was something else, something darker. I excused myself, my stomach tight, and made my way to the restroom. The mirror over the sink was framed in gold, the kind that tried too hard to look expensive. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to drown the unease that had settled in my chest like a stone. I looked at myself, 38 years old, a few lines around the eyes, the hint of gray at the temples, and that damn tie she'd insisted I wear. I hated ties. I hated the way they felt like a leash. As I walked back to the table, I slowed my steps, letting the noise of the restaurant wash over me. Laughter, the clinking of glasses, the low hum of conversation, normalcy wrapped in a bow. But then I saw her. Camille, leaning slightly over the table, her hand moving in a practiced, almost graceful motion. She had something small and white between her fingers, a packet. It disappeared into my glass like a magician's trick. Her eyes darted up, but she didn't see me. Her smile stayed in place, smooth and unbothered. Like she'd done it before. Like she'd rehearsed. My mind splintered. My heart hammered in my chest, so loudly I wondered if she could hear it. Was this real? Had I really seen her drop something in my drink? My anniversary drink? My wife, my partner, my murderer? I stopped behind a pillar, my breath coming in shallow bursts. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But instead, I watched her. She leaned back in her chair, eyes soft as she turned to Renata, who was laughing at something their mother said. Camille's hand rested on the stem of her wineglass, casual, composed. My stomach flipped. I could almost hear her voice in my head. What's wrong, darling? You look pale. I thought about Catherine, our daughter, away at university, oblivious to the storm brewing here. And I thought about the 12 years I'd given this woman. The birthdays, the anniversaries, the fights that ended with whispered apologies and her head on my chest. Was it all an act? I moved slowly, like I was underwater, and approached the table. My hands trembled as I reached for my drink, but I didn't lift it. Instead, I watched Renata, her laugh sharp and brittle, her eyes bright with the same venom she'd always had for me. The charity case, she'd once called me at a family brunch, when she thought I wasn't listening. Like I was the one lucky to be in this family, and not the man who'd saved Camille from a string of heartbreaks and the pity of every friend who wondered why she couldn't keep a man. As I watched her, something in me shifted. A thought, cold and clear, slithered into my mind. I could do it. I could swap the glasses. I could let the poison Camille meant for me find its way to the one who'd always believed I didn't belong. My fingers moved of their own accord. In one smooth motion, I took my glass and placed it where Renata's had been. The wine glistened under the candlelight, innocent as a smile. My chest felt like it would crack open, but my face didn't show it. I turned back to the table, every nerve screaming. Camille's eyes flicked to me. I saw it, the tiniest flicker of surprise. Then, just as quickly, it vanished, replaced by that same soft smile she always wore when the world was watching. She raised her glass, toasting the night. To family, she said, her voice warm. To the family that had always seen me as an outsider. To the woman who just tried to kill me. I raised mine too, feeling like a marionette. Bernard's eyes lingered on me, something unreadable flickering in their depths. And Simone? She was too busy preening for the waiter's attention to notice the small shift in the universe that had just taken place. The glass sat before Renata now, brimming with possibility. The candlelight reflected in its surface like a warning I couldn't heed. I tried to steady my breathing as the table buzzed with conversation again. I wondered if she'd drink it, if she'd pause long enough to smell something off, if she'd taste the bitterness of betrayal, or if she'd drink it down with the same arrogance she'd always shown me. I watched Camille, her eyes bright with triumph, or was it something else? Her lips curved in that same smile that once felt like home. I felt a chill run through me as I realized that smile had always hidden teeth. The night pressed in on me, heavy with secrets and old, silent accusations. The clinking of silverware, the muted music, the warm glow of candlelight, none of it felt real. I was in a dream. No, a nightmare. And in that moment, with the glass before Renata, with Camille's eyes on me, I realized the truth. My wife's eyes sparkled, just not for me. Renata raised the glass mid-toast, her smirk as wide as the horizon, her confidence practically dripping from the rim. The candlelight caught the cut crystal, fracturing it into tiny prisms that danced across her face. She tipped the glass to her lips, oblivious to the tiny, silent exchange I'd made moments earlier. My heart felt like it was beating in someone else's chest, pounding in a rhythm that didn't belong to me. My fingers twitched on the tablecloth, every nerve raw and sparking. Did I really just do that? Had I imagined Camille's hand slipping that packet into my drink? Or was I inventing things to protect myself from the ugly truth that maybe I'd always been blind? My mouth was dry. I couldn't move. I just watched as Renata drank, her eyes on Camille, full of that same haughty satisfaction that had always made me feel like I was the one on the outside. The conversation droned on around me like a record stuck on repeat. Simone holding court about her charity committee's new fundraising gala, Bernard making quiet noises of agreement, Camille playing the perfect daughter, the perfect wife, and me, just another prop in the theater of her life. I tried to swallow, but my throat felt thick. I wanted to scream, but my voice was locked away behind years of learned obedience. Renata set the glass down with a satisfied sigh. "You know," she said, leaning forward, "it's really something that you've managed to stay married this long. I mean, 12 years is practically a miracle for someone like you." Her words dripped like honey laced with arsenic. I opened my mouth to reply, but the air had turned heavy, and my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. I looked at Camille, who stared at me like she'd never seen me before. Her lips curved just slightly, and I could almost hear her voice in my head, the one she used when she thought I was too naive to see the blade behind the smile. Then it happened. Renata's hand trembled as she reached for her fork. A spasm of confusion rippled across her face. She blinked once, twice, her eyes darting around the table like a trapped animal. Camille's smile froze, eyes narrowing as she realized something wasn't right. Renata's breath hitched, a wet, rattling sound that made the fine hairs on my neck stand up. She coughed, a harsh, dry sound that drew Bernard's gaze from his half-eaten salad. "Renata," he said, voice trembling. She tried to answer, but her lips worked soundlessly, a silent film of terror playing across her face. Her hand hit the table with a dull thud, the fork slipping from her fingers and clattering against the china. The sound echoed in my head like a gunshot. Camille bolted from her seat, her face contorted in a mask of panic so perfect it belonged on a stage. "Renata," she shrieked, voice high and sharp, slicing through the restaurant's polite hum like a blade. She lunged across the table, grabbing Renata's arm, her movements frantic, desperate. But her eyes, God, her eyes, didn't flick to me once. I sat there, numb, like I'd been dipped in ice water. I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't even pretend. Because if I hadn't switched glasses, it would have been me on the floor. It would have been Camille's arms around me in a perfect performance of a grieving wife. A waiter rushed over, eyes wide with alarm. Another patron gasped. I heard someone call for help, the word ambulance catching in the air like a bird with a broken wing. Simone's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide and wet. "What's happening?" she wailed, her voice cracking under the strain of her own manufactured perfection. Bernard stumbled to his feet, hands trembling, his face gray as stone. He looked at me, and for a moment, his eyes were full of something like recognition. Like he'd finally seen the monster in the room, and it wasn't me. Camille cradled Renata's head in her lap, whispering frantic reassurances that felt like lies. Her hand stroked Renata's hair, smoothing it back, but her face remained smooth and cold, like she'd rehearsed this scene 1,000 times in the mirror. I wondered if she was disappointed it wasn't me. The restaurant's music had stopped. Every eye was on us, on her, on the unfolding tragedy that no one yet had the words to name. I felt the weight of that silence pressing on my chest, crushing me from the inside out. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. I watched Renata's face pale, her lips turning the color of old roses. She gasped, eyes wild and unfocused. Camille's voice rose in pitch, perfect hysteria. "She's choking. Somebody help her." Her tears came on cue, streaking her flawless makeup like war paint. A man in a dark suit pushed through the crowd, pulling a phone from his pocket. "I'm calling 911, he shouted, his voice the only anchor in the madness. And still, Camille didn't look at me. Not once. She held Renata like she'd practiced it in her mind, every gesture precise. Her eyes flicked to Simone, to Bernard, to the onlookers, but not to me. It was as if I didn't exist. Like I'd already died, and she'd buried me in her mind. I felt a hollowness bloom in my chest, a cold wind that rattled my bones. My hands shook. My mind screamed. But I stayed silent, watching the scene unfold as if I were the ghost she'd wanted me to become. Renata's breaths came in ragged gasps, each one weaker than the last. Camille's voice turned shrill, demanding, commanding. "Someone do something," she cried. Her tears glistened in the candlelight, a perfect portrait of grief. I watched her, memorized the lines of her face, the set of her jaw, the cold fire in her eyes. And I knew, without a doubt, that if I hadn't switched the glasses, she'd be holding me instead. She'd be crying for me, her performance flawless, her lies sealed with a kiss. I sat there, numb, as the ambulance crew burst in and the paramedics knelt by Renata's side. One of them checked her pulse. Another spoke quickly into a radio, the words lost in the rush of adrenaline and disbelief. I tried to find my voice, but it had abandoned me. My lips parted, but no sound came out. I felt like I'd left my body, floating above the table, watching the twisted ballet of betrayal and panic unfold. Camille's hands were still in Renata's hair, her eyes now frantic and searching, finally meeting mine, just for a moment. And in that moment, I saw it. The tiniest flicker of something that wasn't fear. Relief, maybe. Or rage. Or both. And I knew. This was never meant for her. The sirens wailed outside. The restaurant's lights seemed too bright, too sharp, illuminating every flaw, every secret. The hum of conversation had become a low buzz of horror and suspicion. I watched as they lifted Renata onto the gurney, her eyes closed, her breath shallow. Camille followed, her cries echoing in the hollow spaces of my chest. And I just sat there, feeling the weight of every choice I'd made, the bitter taste of survival curdling on my tongue. Because I was the one who'd switched the glasses. I was the one who'd chosen to live. And as they wheeled Renata away, I wondered, what did that make me now? The restaurant was a hurricane of movement, every table a swirl of panic and confusion as the paramedics carried Renata's pale, lifeless form through the dining room. The polished floor gleamed under the harsh overhead lights, catching every tear-streaked face, every trembling hand. My seat felt like an island in the chaos, my body too heavy to rise, too stunned to move. Camille's voice cut through it all, sharp and practiced. "Please, help her. She's my sister." Her tears were a perfect performance, wet trails on flawless skin, eyes wide, hands trembling. She collapsed to the floor in front of Bernard, her father, who stood rigid and gray, like a statue come to life. The waiter who'd called 911 hovered nearby, his hands wringing a cloth napkin, eyes darting between Camille and me. I tried to meet his gaze, to find something human there, but all I saw was confusion. 100 conversations crackled around us. Words like allergy, poison, and foul play rose like embers. But no one said murder. Not yet. Camille didn't even glance my way as the paramedics hoisted Renata's gurney through the narrow door and out into the night. The glass door swung shut behind them with a hiss, leaving a silence so thick it felt like smoke in my lungs. Bernard's eyes met mine, and in that single, trembling stare, I felt a world of secrets. His lips parted, but no words came. He looked at Camille then, and something unspoken passed between them, a message I couldn't decipher, but one that made my skin crawl. Camille turned to me at last, her eyes cold and calculating beneath the sheen of tears. "I'll ride with her," she said, voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. "You should stay with my father. He needs you." I couldn't speak, couldn't move. The tablecloth felt rough under my fingers, the silverware like lead weights. I watched her leave, her blue dress fluttering behind her like a farewell. The ambulance's red lights painted the walls in a sickening rhythm, and then they were gone. The restaurant staff began to gather the remnants of our meal, scraping plates, collecting half-finished glasses of wine, their eyes darting to me as if I might leap up and scream. But I didn't. I sat there, a ghost among the living. Bernard sank into the chair beside me, his face drawn and pale. His hands trembled as he reached for his water glass, but he didn't drink. He just held it, like it might save him from drowning. "I'm sorry," I croaked, my voice breaking like a brittle twig. He cut me off with a weary shake of his head. "You know now, don't you?" he whispered, his voice like paper on stone. I blinked at him, confusion tightening my chest. "Know what?" His eyes found mine then, a raw honesty that scared me more than Camille's smile ever had. "You know what she is," he said. "What they are." His voice wavered. "And what they've been planning." A chill settled in my bones. The hum of the restaurant faded, the clink of cutlery and the murmur of voices retreating into a tunnel of silence. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice thin. He leaned closer, his breath stale and sour. "I should have stopped them when it was just talk," he murmured. "Should have protected you. But I didn't. I didn't believe they'd go through with it." A cold wind seemed to blow through me. "Go through with what?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer. He just stared at me with haunted eyes that had seen too much and said too little for far too long. A waitress approached, her apron stained with spilled coffee. "Sir," she said, her voice cautious, "we're going to need to close the restaurant for the evening. Would you like me to call a cab?" Bernard didn't even look at her. He just kept staring at me, his hands trembling. "Don't go home," he whispered. "Not tonight. She'll be waiting." I wanted to ask what he meant, to demand he explain himself, but my mouth had gone dry. The words stuck in my throat like needles. I nodded slowly, more to myself than to him, and rose from the table. The walk to the exit felt like a lifetime. Every step was a betrayal of the world I thought I knew. Every footfall a reminder that I was walking away from the life I'd built with Camille, away from the illusions I'd clung to for 12 years. Outside, the night air slapped me in the face, cold and bitter. The restaurant's neon sign flickered above me, casting a weak light on the sidewalk. I turned to look back through the glass, at the table where I'd sat with the people who had pretended to be my family. The candlelight inside looked warm and inviting, but I knew better now. That warmth had teeth. I felt Bernard's hand on my shoulder, a feeble grip that barely registered. "I'll handle things here," he said, his voice a whisper. "Go. Now." I nodded, my legs trembling. "Where should I go?" He shook his head. "Anywhere but home. She's dangerous. You have no idea." I wanted to scream, to demand he tell me everything, but his eyes were wet with something I couldn't name, regret, maybe, or guilt. And I understood in that moment that he was as trapped as I was, caught in Camille's web, too weak to fight but too decent to stay silent. "Go," he said again, "before it's too late." I turned and walked down the sidewalk, each step heavier than the last. The night was quiet, the street lights casting long, wavering shadows. I didn't know where I was going. All I knew was that I couldn't go home. Not yet. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, the screen bright in the darkness. I thought of Catherine, my daughter, away at university, blissfully unaware of the poison swirling through the air. I thought of her smile, the way she used to sit on my lap and braid my hair just to make me laugh. I thought of Camille's smile, how I'd once believed it was meant just for me. No one calls it murder until someone dies. But tonight, I'd seen enough to know that death was only part of the story. Sometimes murder was written in the quiet moments, in the glint of a wife's eye, in the silence of a father who'd seen too much. As I walked into the darkness, my chest ached with the weight of the truth I'd only just begun to understand. I knew Camille's plan had failed tonight, but I also knew it wouldn't be her last. And somewhere inside me, a small voice whispered the most terrifying truth of all: she'd always been this way. And I'd never seen it coming. I drove through the night, the city's bright lights giving way to the sleepy hum of the suburbs. The road blurred under the weight of my thoughts, each mile marker a reminder that I was heading back to a house that no longer felt like mine. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, my mind replaying the image of Camille's delicate hand slipping that packet into my drink. 12 years. 12 years of shared dinners, laughter, whispered promises in the dark. And now all I could see were the cracks, hairline fractures that had always been there, waiting for the right pressure to shatter everything. The house loomed ahead, its white columns bathed in the pale glow of the security lights. I pulled into the driveway, engine idling as I stared at the front door. It looked the same as always, polished brass handle, white painted wood, a neat wreath of silk flowers. Camille insisted on replacing every season. But now it felt like the entrance to a tomb. I killed the engine and sat in the silence, my breath fogging the windshield. My pulse thrummed in my ears as I tried to summon the courage to go inside. I'd survived dinner, but survival wasn't the same as safety. Every memory in that house felt tainted now. Every photo on the wall, every pillow on the couch. Pushing the door open, I stepped inside. The scent of vanilla candles hit me like a wave, Camille's favorite. They were everywhere, on the console table, on the kitchen island, on the mantel above the fireplace. Each one a carefully chosen piece of her world. I moved through the hallway, the polished wood floors cold under my feet. My shoes felt too loud in the stillness. I half expected Camille to appear around the corner, smile bright, eyes sparkling like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't tried to kill me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the screen lighting up with a name I knew too well. Camille. The letters glowed against the darkness like a threat. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Then I answered, forcing my voice to steady. Hello. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. She's stable, she said. They think it was food poisoning. Renata's resting now. Food poisoning. The lie was so smooth, so easy, it made my stomach twist. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. Good, I said. That's good. A pause stretched between us like a chasm. I could hear her breathing, slow and controlled. Then she spoke again, her tone casual, almost teasing. You didn't touch your drink, did you? Her question sliced through me, cold and precise. My mind raced. Had she seen me switch the glasses? Did she know I'd saved myself at her sister's expense? I forced my voice to sound natural. No, I said. I wasn't feeling well. Thought I'd skip it. Silence. Long enough that I wondered if she could hear the hammering of my heart. Then she exhaled, a sound that felt too rehearsed. I'm glad, she said. I'd hate to think of you getting sick on our anniversary. There it was, oh, her relief. Not because she cared about me, but because her plan had failed. The venom she'd poured into my glass had found the wrong throat, and now she was left with nothing but a mess to clean up. I'm sorry about Renata, I said, my voice hollow. She'll be fine, Camille said, dismissive. She's always been dramatic. Her casual cruelty twisted my gut. I wanted to scream at her, to demand she confess. But the words caught in my throat. If she knew I'd figured it out, what would she do next? Get some rest, she continued, her voice a syrupy caress. We can talk tomorrow. I ended the call and let the phone slip from my hand. It landed on the floor with a dull thud. I stood there in the hallway, staring at the place where my daughter's shoes used to sit, the place where Camille and I had shared 1,000 moments, some good, some bad. Now every memory felt like a lie. I wandered into the living room, the moonlight pooling on the rug. The photos on the wall stared back at me. Our wedding day, our first house, Catherine's 5th birthday. Each image a snapshot of a life I thought was mine. Now they felt like trophies in a game I hadn't even realized I was playing. I moved to the mantel, fingers tracing the edge of a frame. Camille's smile glowed in the photograph, her eyes alight with a warmth that felt like a punch to the chest. I wanted to believe that woman still existed, that the person I loved wasn't just a mask she wore. But tonight had torn that illusion away. The house felt cold, like it had been emptied of everything that made it home. I could feel the weight of her presence in every corner, her scent clinging to the air like a ghost. Every step felt like an intrusion into a life that had never really been mine. A noise upstairs, a floorboard creaking, made me jump. I stared at the staircase, half expecting her to appear, her face calm, her voice sweet. But the house was empty. Just me, and the echo of 12 years spent loving a stranger. I sat on the couch, the cushions too soft, too familiar. My hand shook as I tried to process everything. The packet in my drink, the cold calculation in her voice, the relief when she learned I hadn't drunk the poison. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to pack a bag and never look back. But I couldn't. Not yet. Catherine deserved to know the truth. She was my daughter, and no matter how hard Camille tried to pull the strings, I couldn't abandon her. I thought of her smile, the way she'd called me daddy even after she was too old for it. I thought of the way Camille had always tried to shape her, mold her into her own image. I couldn't let that happen. The house was ours, but it wasn't my home anymore. It was a trap, a place built on lies and secrets. And now that I'd seen the truth, I couldn't pretend anymore. I stood and walked to the window, staring out at the darkened street. My reflection stared back, haunted eyes, a man I barely recognized. I wasn't the same person who'd walked into that restaurant tonight, hoping for a quiet anniversary dinner. I was someone else now, someone who knew what Camille was capable of. And as the night pressed in around me, I promised myself one thing: I wouldn't let her win. At 1 a.m., I was still awake, every nerve frayed, every muscle tensed. Sleep had become a foreign language I no longer spoke. The house, once a sanctuary, felt like a trap waiting to spring. I sat in the darkened living room, the faint glow of a table lamp illuminating the framed photographs on the walls. Wedding photos, Catherine's first day of school, family vacations that now felt like stage performances. The sound of a car door shutting outside cut through the night like a blade. I stiffened, ears straining for the faintest sign of trouble. Footsteps crunched on the gravel path, steady and deliberate. I thought it might be Camille returning from the hospital, ready to spin a new web of lies. I rose, heart hammering, a sheen of sweat on my palms. A gentle knock rattled the door. 3 soft taps, then silence. I hesitated, fingers resting on the doorknob. The darkness beyond the peephole was empty, a yawning void that mirrored the pit in my stomach. I turned the knob slowly, ready to slam the door at the first sign of her perfume. But it wasn't Camille on the porch. It was Bernard. His gray hair clung to his forehead in damp strands, his eyes bloodshot and ringed with exhaustion. His suit was crumpled, a tie hanging askew around his neck like a noose. He looked like a man who'd aged a decade in the past few hours. He didn't say hello. He didn't even offer a polite greeting. He stepped inside without asking, shutting the door behind him with a soft click that sounded like the end of something. I stared at him, my mouth dry. "Bernard," I managed, my voice cracking. "What?" "Sit." He interrupted, his tone low and urgent. He pointed to the couch like a general ordering a soldier to a firing line. I obeyed, legs folding under me like they didn't belong to me anymore. Bernard stood in the middle of the room, his hands trembling. He looked around, eyes darting from the photos on the wall to the pile of mail on the coffee table. His gaze lingered on a framed picture of Catherine, 7 years old, smiling with a gap-toothed grin. His face softened for a moment, but then the hardness returned. "Camille," he said, his voice rough. "She's not who you think she is. And neither is Renata." His words hit me like a punch to the chest. I swallowed, my mouth dry. "I know she tried to poison me tonight," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I saw her slip something into my drink." Bernard nodded, his face pale. "She's been planning this for months," he said, voice trembling. "Renata too." I thought it was all talk at first, just sisters venting about money, about how you were holding Camille back. But then it became something else. Something cold. I felt the room tilt, the walls pressing in. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice sharp with a fear I hadn't fully named. Bernard's eyes filled with a guilt so deep it made my stomach clench. "Because I should have stopped them," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have spoken up when it was still just words. But I didn't. I let them get too far. And tonight," his voice caught, and he shook his head, his shoulders sagging. "I think she would have let you die," he continued, his voice hollow. "She'd already changed the insurance paperwork. She and Renata even talked about how to make it look like an accident. I thought they were just angry. I didn't think they'd actually do it." My mind reeled. The air felt too thin, like I couldn't get enough oxygen. I thought of Catherine again, her bright eyes, her laughter. Camille had wanted to erase me, make me a footnote in her life story. And Bernard had known and done nothing. "You need to leave tonight," Bernard said suddenly, his voice urgent. "Get out of this house. Camille will come home soon, and when she does, she'll know you saw her. She'll know you didn't drink from that glass. And she'll know you're a threat." I stared at him, my hands shaking. "Leave? And go where?" "Catherine's away at school. I can't just disappear." Bernard shook his head, his eyes desperate. "Catherine's not in any immediate danger," he said. "She's out of town. Camille can't reach her easily. But she'll find you here. She'll finish what she started tonight." My heart raced. The weight of everything crashed down on me. Every dinner, every whispered promise, every touch that now felt like a lie. Camille had planned my death like a business transaction, and her father had watched it happen from the sidelines. Bernard reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope, pressing it into my hand. This is everything I've gathered, emails, receipts, notes they left around the house. It's not enough to put her in prison yet, but it's enough to make her sweat. Take it. Keep it safe. I looked down at the envelope, my hands trembling. The paper felt heavy, like it held my life inside. I met his eyes, searching for something. Remorse, love, regret. Why help me now? I asked, my voice hoarse. He looked away, his jaw tightening. Because I see now what I let happen, he said, his voice low. Because you're the only decent one left in this family, and I can't watch you die for my silence. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Some father, I spat, the anger flaring like a match. He flinched, his eyes closing briefly. I know, he whispered. And I'm sorry. The apology hung between us like a prayer. Bernard straightened, his face hardening again. Pack a bag, he said. Cash, credit cards, clothes. Nothing that ties you to this house. I'll stall her as long as I can. I rose, my legs trembling. I need to tell Catherine, I said, my voice breaking. Later, he insisted. When it's safe. For now, trust me. She'll come looking for you. I nodded, my chest tight. I turned toward the stairs, every step heavy with the weight of the life I was leaving behind. Every picture on the walls, every trinket on the shelves, each one a piece of the lie I'd called home. I threw clothes into a duffel bag, my hands moving like they belonged to someone else. Jeans, t-shirts, my passport, the cash I'd stashed in the kitchen drawer. I paused by Catherine's room, the door slightly ajar. The pink comforter, the stuffed animals. My daughter's world, untouched by her mother's betrayal. Bernard stood by the front door when I came down, his face pale but determined. Go, he said, his voice firm. Don't look back. I stepped outside, the night air sharp in my lungs. I turned once, looking at the house that had been mine, the house that had betrayed me. And then I turned away, into the darkness, a stranger in my own life. The night air was thick with a hush that felt like the world itself was holding its breath. I left the house behind me like a discarded shell, the porch light still burning like an accusation. Every step I took down that familiar sidewalk felt like I was breaking free from a lie I'd built for 12 years. I drove without knowing where I was going, every streetlight slicing through my thoughts like a blade. The city was a maze of memories. Every corner held something that felt too familiar, too dangerous. Camille would come home eventually, and she'd find the space I'd left behind. Empty coffee cup, half-folded throw blanket, a man-shaped shadow in the place she'd hoped to bury me. It was instinct that took me to Malik's place. Malik, my college roommate and the only person who'd ever seen me at my worst and stuck around. He'd been the best man at my wedding, the godfather to my daughter, the voice on the other end of the line when I'd had too much to drink and too many regrets. We hadn't spoken in years, not since Camille had quietly insisted I focus on our family. But some people are stitched into your bones, no matter how much time tries to unravel them. His apartment was in the old part of town, the kind of place that still had creaking floors and brass doorknobs that turned with a stubborn squeak. I parked across the street and just sat there, watching his window glow like a beacon in the night. My hands trembled as I thought about what I was about to say, what I was about to ask. I climbed the stairs, each one protesting under my weight. I raised my hand to knock, but my breath caught. Would he open the door and see me as a stranger? Would he tell me I'd made my bed and now had to lie in it? I knocked. Once. Twice. The door swung open before I could lose my nerve. Malik stood there, wearing a threadbare t-shirt and sweatpants, his hair a mess of tight curls that had always defied any attempt at taming. His eyes went wide, the shock of seeing me raw and unfiltered. Man, he said, his voice low and even. Look at you. I tried to smile, but it felt like my face might crack. Hey, I managed, my voice thin. Say no more, he interrupted, pulling me into the apartment with a force that almost knocked the breath from my lungs. Come in. The living room was small, cluttered with books and half-finished projects, a broken guitar, a stack of tech manuals, a coffee mug full of pins. It felt alive, the way a place should when it's actually lived in. He gestured for me to sit, then disappeared into the kitchen. I heard the hiss of the kettle, the clink of cups. I didn't realize I was shaking until I saw my hands in the lamplight, fingers trembling like leaves in a storm. Malik came back, setting a mug of black coffee in front of me. He sat across from me, elbows on his knees, eyes sharp. Talk to me, he said. Everything. The words poured out of me in a rush. Camille at the restaurant, the packet in my drink, the glass I'd switched with Renata's, the ambulance, Bernard's late-night confession. Every detail tumbled out like a confession I hadn't even realized I'd been waiting to make. Malik didn't blink. He just listened, his face a mask of focus, his eyes like a lighthouse in the dark. When I finally ran out of words, I felt lighter and heavier all at once. Damn, he breathed, leaning back. He ran a hand through his hair. She really tried to kill you. Yeah, I whispered, the weight of it settling in my chest. And I let her get that close. Malik shook his head. Man, don't do that. You didn't let her do anything. She played you. And you saw it before it was too late. That's survival, brother. That's strength. His words hit me like a bomb. I'd been carrying the shame of it, like somehow I deserved what she'd done. But Malik's voice was steady, a reminder that sometimes strength is in surviving, in walking away. She's not done, I said, my voice shaking. Bernard gave me this. I pulled the envelope from my jacket, the edges soft and worn from my hands. Emails, receipts, notes. Proof she was planning this. But it's not enough. Malik took the envelope, flipping through the pages with the precision of a man who'd spent years in boardrooms and back alleys. He looked up at me, eyes sharp. This is a start, he said. But if she's as smart as you say, she's got backups. Plans within plans. He leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. We need to fight this. Not by running. Not by hiding. By flipping the whole damn table. I blinked at him, the idea foreign and electric. Flip the table? He grinned, that same grin that had gotten us through late-night exams and bad breakups. Yeah, find out what she's hiding. What her endgame is. Expose her. Make her play defense for once. My chest tightened. She's dangerous, Malik. She's got money, connections. So do I, he cut in, his voice hard as steel. And I've got something she doesn't. I've got you. The man who knows her better than anyone. For the first time since dinner, I felt a flicker of hope. Malik had always been the fighter, the one who could take the worst news and turn it into a plan. Okay, I said, my voice steadier. But where do we start? He leaned back, crossing his arms. First, we follow the money. Women like Camille don't do anything without a paper trail. If she's been planning to kill you, she's been planning her escape too. Offshore accounts, fake names, something. I nodded, the pieces clicking into place. We find it, and we find her. Malik's eyes gleamed. Exactly. And when we do, we'll make sure she can't hide behind her lies anymore. The night stretched long, but for the first time, I didn't feel alone. Malik was here. My friend. My brother in every way that counted. Camille had tried to bury me. But thanks to Malik, I wasn't in the ground yet. And if she thought she could finish the job, she was about to find out just how wrong she was. What out of our lives? But now, staring at those deposits, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, I felt a sickness in my gut. Camille wasn't just planning my death. She'd been building a new life. With him. Jesus, I muttered, my hand trembling as I reached for the mug of coffee Malik had placed in front of me. It had gone cold, but I didn't care. How long? Malik's eyes were sharp, unflinching. The first payment was 8 months ago. The last one was 3 days before your anniversary. I tried to breathe, but the air felt too thick. My mind reeled, memories crashing like broken glass. The stolen glances, the late-night texts she'd claimed were work. Every smile she'd given him across our dinner table while I sat there, oblivious. Bastard, I spat, slamming the mug down so hard coffee sloshed over the rim. She was paying him to. What? Kill me? Malik shook his head. Maybe. Or maybe to keep him quiet. Either way, it's shady as hell. He pulled up another file, this one grainy. Surveillance photos from a security camera, Camille and Landon, arms linked, in a Paris cafe. Her head thrown back in laughter, his hand on her thigh like he owned her. My chest tightened until I thought I'd break. Malik let out a low whistle. She's been planning a new life with him, he said. Paris, Santorini, you name it. The whole 9 yards. I stared at the screen, my eyes burning. My wife, no, the woman I thought was my wife, smiling like I'd never made her smile. It was like looking at a stranger wearing her face. And here's the kicker, Malik said, pulling up an email thread with Camille's name in the sender field. She told the insurance company to expedite the payout, effective immediately upon death. He paused, his voice going hard. Your death. The words felt like knives, each one sinking deeper. She'd planned every detail, the packet and the drink, the insurance claim, the future she'd share with Landon. and I nearly played right into her hands. Malik's hand landed on my shoulder, grounding me. "Hey," he said, his voice low but fierce. "You didn't drink it. You're still here. That means you've got a chance to fight back." A cold resolve settled over me, hardening every fragile place inside. "We need to go to the police," I said, my voice steady now. Malik shook his head. "We will. But right now, all we've got are digital records and a bunch of circumstantial evidence. Camille's smart. She'll have explanations lined up, lawyers in her pocket." I clenched my jaw. "Then what?" He leaned in. I sharp. "Then we hit her where it hurts. We find her accounts, her plans, her exit strategy. We gather everything, solid evidence. Enough that she can't squirm her way out of it." I nodded, my mind racing. "She's already ahead of us," I muttered. "She always was." Malik's grin was thin, but it reached his eyes. "Not anymore, brother. She's been playing her game for too long. It's time to flip the board." He opened a new tab, fingers flying over the keyboard. "She's been transferring funds offshore," he said. "Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Singapore. But here's the thing, she's sloppy. A transaction she made last month triggered a red flag on an international anti-fraud database. We can use that." A spark of hope ignited in my chest. "You can get us in?" He nodded, a shark's grin on his face. "I've got contacts. We'll need to move fast, though. If she suspects we're onto her, she'll vanish." I leaned back, exhaling slowly. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe, like I had a shot at reclaiming my life. "Thank you," I said, my voice raw. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Malik's eyes softened. "You'd be dead," he said bluntly. "But you're not. And as long as you're alive, we've got a chance." I stared at the screen, at the ledger of betrayal laid out in black and white. Camille's lies, Landon's greed. It was all there, waiting to be used. "Let's bring her down," I said, my voice cold as steel. Malik's smile was grim. "Damn right." Outside, the sun climbed higher, casting light on the files she never meant me to find. The woman I'd loved was gone, replaced by a predator in a wedding ring. And now, I had the proof. I was done being her victim. It was time to fight. The call came just after noon, a shrill ring that cut through the cramped quiet of Malik's apartment like a blade. I'd been sitting on his worn leather couch, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee that tasted like burned memories, the weight of Camille's betrayal pressing down on me with every breath. Malik had gone to the back room to make some calls, contacts, he said, who could help us connect the dots on Camille's offshore accounts. When my phone vibrated, my stomach lurched. For a second, I thought it might be Camille, calling to spin another lie, but the name on the screen made my breath catch. "Detective Renault," I muttered, answering on the second ring. "Mr. Duval," she said, her voice clipped but not unfriendly. "I have some news." I felt the walls of the apartment close in around me. "What is it?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Renata regained consciousness," she said. "She's stable enough to speak. She's asked to see you." My pulse skittered, a rapid drumbeat that felt too fast for my chest. "Me? What?" "She says she has something to tell you," Renault said. "Something important." Important. The word felt heavy, like it was weighted with every lie Camille had ever told. "I'll come now," I said. Malik poked his head around the corner, his brows knit. "Everything okay?" I shook my head, setting down the coffee mug. "Renata's awake," I said. "She wants to talk." Malik's eyes sharpened. "That's the one who called you the charity case, right?" "Yeah," I muttered, rubbing the bridge of my nose. "But she's also the one who nearly died because of me." "Or because of Camille." Malik grabbed his keys from the counter. "I'm coming with you," he said. "No way you're going in there alone." I didn't argue. The hospital was a 30-minute drive that felt like 30 years. I sat in the passenger seat, watching the world slide by in a haze of green and gray. Every intersection felt like a choice, every red light a reminder that time was running out. When we pulled into the hospital lot, Malik parked under a flickering lamp. "You good?" he asked, his voice steady. I nodded, but the knot in my chest refused to loosen. "Yeah," I lied. The nurse at the front desk led us through a maze of antiseptic hallways to Renata's room. She looked different in the hospital bed, smaller, her usual venom drained by the cocktail of medications that had kept her alive. The color had returned to her cheeks, but her eyes were ringed with shadows. Her gaze flicked to me, sharp and knowing, and for the first time in years, I saw something other than disdain in her eyes. I saw fear. I saw regret. "Marcus," she croaked, her voice a rasp. Close the door. I glanced at Malik, who stood rooted by the foot of the bed, arms crossed. He stays, I said. She nodded weakly, tears welling in her eyes. Okay. She licked her lips, her hands trembling against the bedsheets. I saw you switch the glasses. My breath hitched. Renata. She shook her head. Listen, Camille. She whispered to me before dessert. She said, he won't make it through dessert. Her words felt like a punch to the gut, knocking the air from my lungs. Malik muttered a curse under his breath. Are you sure? I asked, my voice trembling. She let out a bitter laugh that dissolved into a cough. She's my sister, Marcus. I've seen her lie. I've seen her cheat. But I've never seen her so sure about anything. I thought it was just another one of her games. I didn't know. Her voice broke, tears streaming down her cheeks. Malik moved to her side, his expression softening. Hey, he said gently. You didn't know she'd go that far. Renata shook her head, her eyes bloodshot. I should have. I've seen the way she looks at you. Like you're a puzzle she's already solved. I should have stopped her. I swallowed hard. Why tell me now? She squeezed her eyes shut, her breathing ragged. Because I almost died. Because I saw how fast she dropped the act, how quick she started calculating. She didn't even try to comfort me. She just moved on. Like I was a mistake she needed to fix. The room felt too small, the air too thick. I tried to process her words, but my thoughts tangled like a knotted rope. She's dangerous, Renata whispered. She's been planning this for months, maybe years. I overheard her talking about the insurance payout. About the new life she'd have once you were gone. She said she'd be free. I felt my stomach lurch. The files Malik had found, the bank records, the emails, were real, but this was different. This was Camille's own sister admitting she'd heard the plan from Camille's lips. Would you testify to that? Malik asked, his voice calm but urgent. Renata hesitated, her fingers twisting the hospital sheet. She looked at me, eyes wide and terrified. She'll come for me if I do. She's capable of anything. Malik leaned forward, his voice low and even. And she'll get away with it if you don't. Silence. Renata's tears fell onto the pillow, darkening the fabric like a stain. Finally, she nodded. I'll do it, she whispered. I'll tell them everything. Relief flooded my chest, but it was edged with a cold, bitter dread. Camille wouldn't go quietly. She'd fight. She'd lie. And she'd do whatever it took to protect the life she'd built on my bones. Malik clapped a hand on my shoulder. That's it, brother, he said. We've got her. This is what we needed. I looked at Renata, her face pale but determined. Thank you, I said, my voice cracking. You didn't have to. She shook her head. Yes, I did, she said. Because she would have killed you, Marcus. And maybe me too. The nurse peeked in, her face drawn. She needs to rest now, she said softly. Malik and I nodded, stepping out into the hall. The air felt different, charged, electric. We've got her, Malik said again, his grin fierce. Now let's make sure she can't wriggle out of it. I nodded, the weight on my chest lifting for the first time in days. Camille had tried to kill me, but now the truth was out. Her sister had woken up, and Camille's carefully crafted world was about to come crashing down. I didn't sleep the night after Renata spoke up. Even with Malik's assurance that we had her now, my mind churned with every possible way Camille could wriggle out of this. Every path she'd mapped out in her twisted sense of survival. Camille didn't just cover her tracks. She burned the forest to the ground and planted new seeds. By sunrise, I was pacing Malik's living room, my heart thudding a grim rhythm that reminded me just how close I'd come to dying. Malik handed me a fresh coffee, black, no sugar, exactly how I liked it, and flipped open his laptop. She's running, he said, eyes flicking over a screen full of ship logs and customs reports he'd pulled from some dark corner of the internet. I called in a favor. Bernard, God bless his guilty conscience, passed me the name of the yacht. Afterthought. Afterthought. I repeated, the word heavy on my tongue. It sounded so casual, so glib, like Camille's entire plan to kill me had been nothing but a footnote in her perfect life. Malik's face darkened. Registered under a shell corporation in Monaco. Sailed out from the local marina 2 days ago, right after Renata landed in the hospital. I felt a sick twist in my gut. She didn't even wait for Renata to die. She didn't have to, Malik said. As far as she knew, you were still in the dark. She probably figured she could smooth things over if you lived, call it an accident, say it was a bad batch of wine. And Landon? I asked, bile in my throat. Malik's fingers drummed on the laptop. He's with her, he confirmed. Text messages between them on the burner phone. He's been her shadow since the night you caught her. I clenched my jaw. So they're together. Good. Malik's eyes widened. Good. Yeah, I said, my voice low and cold. Because that means they'll both be there when the hammer falls. He let out a low whistle. You're learning, he muttered. We got the Coast Guard on standby. Bernard's lawyer pulled strings he didn't even know he had. They'll intercept the yacht 15 miles off the coast. 15 miles. Close enough that she thought she was safe. I closed my eyes, picturing her face, the way her lips curved in that smile that always hit a knife. I wondered if she'd be standing on the deck in a sun hat, sunglasses on, already planning her new life. I wondered if Landon's hand would be on her back, a glass of champagne in his other hand, while my corpse floated in her wake. Let's go, I said, my voice iron. Malik grabbed his keys, his grin sharp as a blade. Hell yes. The drive to the marina was a blur of salt air and burning fury. Every mile felt like a countdown. Malik's contacts had given us the slip number, a charter boat with a government tag. We boarded in silence, the hum of the engines filling the air with a tense vibration that matched my own. The Coast Guard captain was young but carried himself like he'd seen enough. He met me with a handshake and a steady gaze. You sure about this, sir? Once we're on that yacht, it's all or nothing. I nodded, the tremor in my hand betraying the war inside me. She tried to kill me, I said. She's going to do it to someone else if we don't stop her. He clapped a hand on my shoulder, a solid weight that grounded me. Then let's get your life back. The water churned under the hull, waves rolling in steady, relentless beats. I stared at the horizon, imagining the afterthought just beyond it, Camille's laughter echoing over the deck. Vessel in sight, the captain called out. My chest tightened. The yacht was a sleek, white shape against the blue, its name painted on the side in script so pretty it made me want to tear it off letter by letter. Move in, the captain ordered. Our boat surged forward, the yacht looming larger, every detail sharpening into focus. A figure on the deck, Camille. Her hair whipped in the wind, sunglasses perched on her head, one hand raised to shield her eyes. Next to her, Landon leaned against the railing, a drink in hand, the picture of casual success. They didn't see us at first. Not until the Coast Guard's lights flashed and the loudspeaker crackled. This is the United States Coast Guard, the voice boomed. Cut your engines and prepare for boarding. Camille's head snapped toward us. Even from this distance, I saw her face change. That smile, so easy, so practiced, slipped, replaced by something cold and reptilian. She reached for Landon's arm, her mouth moving fast, words I couldn't hear. He looked at her, then at us, panic bleeding through his tan. Let's move, the captain barked. A Coast Guard cutter swung in, boarding team leaping onto the yacht like predators. I watched from our deck, my hands clenched so tight they hurt. They found them in the cabin. Camille tried to talk her way out of it. Of course she did. She'd always been the best liar in the room. But the Coast Guard officer held up a phone with text messages laid bare, every plan spelled out, every dollar transferred. I watched her face fall, a slow crumpling that would have broken my heart once. Now it felt like watching a mask slide off, revealing the stranger underneath. Marcus, she screamed, her voice shrill and cracking. Marcus, I can explain. I met her gaze, the final piece of my old life breaking away. No, I said. I think you've explained enough. Landon tried to bolt, some rat-like instinct that kicked in when the ship started sinking, but the officers caught him before he reached the deck. He cursed, his face red with fury and fear. But I also knew the fight wasn't over. Because while Camille might have been in custody, the damage she'd done would take a lifetime to fix. And Catherine, my daughter, was now the only thing that mattered. The car ride to Catherine's dorm was a blur of streetlights and exhaustion. Every mile felt like a gamble. Would Camille's poison have reached her by now, hidden in a hug or a phone call? Malik drove like a man on a mission, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning the road as if Camille herself might jump out of the shadows. I sat in the passenger seat, my heart pounding with every turn of the tires. When we pulled up, the campus was quiet, the pathways lit by weak pools of yellow light. It felt like a different world than the one I'd been living in, one where a father's biggest worry should be tuition or grades, not the possibility that his daughter had been marked for manipulation by her own mother. Malik killed the engine and turned to me, his voice calm but urgent. You ready for this? I nodded, though my throat felt like sandpaper. I have to be. We climbed the steps to her building, the chill of the evening air sharp on my skin. I could hear my pulse in my ears, a steady drumbeat that made every second feel like a lifetime. I knocked on her door, each tap echoing like a question I didn't want answered. Catherine opened the door with a smile that nearly undid me. 18, bright-eyed, with that same stubborn chin she'd inherited from me. She wore a gray hoodie with the university's crest, and her hair pulled into a messy ponytail. "Dad," she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug. For a second, the world felt normal, her arms around my neck, her voice light and warm. But then I pulled back and saw the confusion in her eyes. "What's going on? Why didn't you call?" Malik stepped inside, closing the door behind us. I took a breath that felt like it might tear my lungs apart. "Catherine," I said, my voice shaking, "I need you to sit down. There's something you need to know." She frowned but obeyed, perching on the edge of her bed like a bird ready to take flight. "Dad, you're scaring me." I sat across from her, every word a stone I had to lift. "It's about your mother." Her eyes widened, fear flickering across her face. "Mom? What happened? Is she okay?" I shook my head, the weight of it almost too much. "No, Catherine. She's been lying to us. She's been planning things, terrible things." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Malik moved beside me, his presence solid and grounding. "Your mother tried to kill me," I said, the words scraping my throat raw. "She wanted the insurance money, the house, everything. She almost succeeded." Catherine's face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, that's not true." "It is," I said softly, my own tears blurring the edges of the room. "She would have let me die, Catherine. And then she would have used you, your name, your trust, to finish what she started." She covered her mouth, sobs racking her body. "No," she cried. "No, she wouldn't. She loves us." I reached across and took her hand, holding it tight. "I thought that too," I whispered. "For 12 years, I believed in her. But I was wrong, and I can't let her hurt you." Malik stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Your father has the evidence. He's not lying. Your mother's been arrested. She can't hurt you now." Catherine's sobs slowed, her breathing ragged. She looked up at me with eyes that were too old for 18. She would have let you die?" "Yes," I said, my heart breaking all over again. "And she would have used you as a pawn to get what she wanted. But you're not a pawn, Catherine. You're my daughter. You're strong, and you deserve the truth." She closed her eyes, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "What do we do now?" she whispered. I squeezed her hand. "We move forward," I said. "Together. No more lies." She nodded slowly, and in that moment, I saw her strength, the steel she'd inherited from me. Camille had tried to use her, but Catherine was no pawn. She was a queen, and together, we'd rebuild the life Camille had tried to steal.